GOP does have to show leadership. I'm down to my last cough drop. I'm guarding it jealously. Sorry, I apologize. The first thing that I would look at is and to be watching is the G20 in Seoul next week. Mr. Obama will want to show political and economic leadership quickly. Mr. Boehner is going to be looking for some kind of compromise with the White House. He has to get something out of the gate soon. And it may be, just may be, the free trade agreement with Korea. I think the other two will linger they'll linger, but Korea might have a chance. So not only watch the G20, and if there's that infamous camera shot of the formal handshake with the two leaders of Korea and the United States, but also watch Mr. Boehner's formal remarks and reactions after the G20. It will tell you much about what the trade agenda in Congress is going to be for probably the next 2 to 3 years. On trade, the last 2 years has been all about jobs, 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 and preferably manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing in the United States, especially small and medium-sized manufacturers, it's almost like the small farmers of before. You know, used to have commercials in the U.S. where the subsidies to U.S. farmers were always protected and defended by showing the small family farmer in Oklahoma. That's kind of what the manufacturing PR efforts are in the United States. Larger manufacturers, large companies, depends on who it is, but them and Wall Street are being battered in the United States. But for the most part, I think that a domestic economic focus is the game in town for at least the next 2 years, probably well into 2013 and 2014 as well. It all depends on the unemployment rate. Every evening, it's either terrorism or what the daily unemployment rate is what we're watching on CBS and NBC in the United States. And so that populist, very constituent-driven demands to make my life better. I don't know why it's not better, but it was really better 5 years ago. And I can't understand why I'm so mad. And why I've lost my house. And why have I lost my health care when I lost my job in the U.S. The anxiety level in the United States, I call it anxiety. Other policy wonks will call it polar voter anger. I call it anxiety. It's right here. It is like it's palpable all over the United States. My generation of Americans are scared. And you know, when people get scared, it started with 9/11, out of physical insecurity. We're now into the last 2 years of economic uncertainty. What do people do? They circle the wagons. And that's what we've seen. Whether it be Buy America, that was introduced last year, 2009, sorry, or what I call Buy America in sheep and wolf clothing. We will see it pop up in various forms. Make no mistake about that. The Americans demand it of their policymakers. They expect it. Trade, if they're going to talk about trade at all, it's China. China sucks the air out of every policy conversation or media interview about trade. NAFTA is a 4-letter word. 1% of American companies are in the exporting game. Compare that with where we are in Canada. So no comfort level or knowledge or sophistication about trade. Their Exim Bank doles out $20 billion a year to help U.S. exporters. We give out $80 billion a year. Shows you where the focus is. Mr. Obama's going to be on the hook with his National Export Initiative to double their exports in 5 years. That's a tall order, but Secretary Locke, the Department of Commerce, is on the warpath on that. On China, not only is it currency manipulation that some people in the United States kind of get, but not really. They just know that it's China, China, China. China seems to be the cause of so much of their woes in American households. You kind of see it reflected in coverage by U.S. media, or some U.S. media. It is also the real reason why U.S. import volumes have dramatically risen, and for the most part they're in finished goods. You need to know that for lots of reasons, I'm sure you do already. But the surge of finished goods in the United States has not only affected the trade balance, but it has brought forth in the last few years this real focus on import safety. Chinese drywall in Florida homes that crumbled, I guess, or was unsafe, brought us the Foreign Manufacturers Legal Accountability Act. That was all about seeking damages from manufacturers overseas, and we got hit with it as well. Why? Because Americans make no distinction about their borders. The U.S.-Canada border, we can talk about that special relationship until we're blue in the face, it gets us nowhere. It doesn't. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, especially kind of early this morning. We are not on their radar screen. That's why it is an uphill battle for Gary Doer, Ambassador Doer in Washington, frankly for me, that we spend, I guess, almost every day on the Hill saying, hey, whoa, over here, Canada, whoa, you're doing that, that's China. That's your enforcement concern, your security concern, your product concern about the Pacific Rim. You've had us as a NAFTA trading partner for the last, what are we up to, 17 years? Is it young, old enough to drive yet? And we've lost the benefits, the tariff reduction benefits of that NAFTA because of this fear and response to this rising surge of imports that have been less than quality standards in the United States. And this reaction has and will continue to result in this alphabet soup of border agencies along the Canada-US border. And if you talk to your companies, and especially if you talk to your truck driver or your warehouse guy, they're going to know what I'm talking about. There are more men and women along the 49th parallel today, and I used to be a customs inspector way back when, I won't tell you when, than we've ever seen before. They're tripping over each other. They start on the U.S.-Mexico border, try to build their career in drug seizures, get rotated to the U.S.-Canada border, and guess what? They're looking, and they're opening, and they're searching. So now we have new agencies on the block called the Consumer Product Safety Commission. They'll start being on the border in 2011. The more people, the more inspections. More inspections means more compliance. More compliance means more fees. Jay had that up on his screen earlier this morning. And if you talk to them to say, that's unnecessary for our bilateral trade. You don't need to impose that on our integrated supply chain. They'll nod. They'll get it. It will not be reflected in national policy. Okay, I'm going to speak for another 2 minutes. I just want to make one more argument. This anxiety level, new politics, that's highly unpredictable, is also arriving at our doorsteps at a time when the 2009 Obama stimulus package of $787 billion, the infrastructure spending of $280 billion is by now, except for a few large programs, completely spent. It will have to be completely spent by the end of next year, of 2011. And no one in the U.S. is forecasting a new stimulus package along those lines, apart from what Mr. Bernanke did yesterday. So there's a couple of things on that. What do you do in the vacuum of when all that money is spent? Because projects are started, innovation has been funded to some degree. The Department of Energy had more money from ERA, from the stimulus money, than they literally knew what to do with. And the Assistant Secretary told Jay that last year in a meeting at the DOE headquarters. So there's one thing. So we're probably not going to get that kind of stimulus money in the United States for a while. There isn't, because budget deficits and budget cuts, and it's going to be all the rage. The other thing is that in this area of predictability, and I'd like to hear the comments from my panelists, the money that is sitting in banks and in venture capital offices in trillions of dollars will continue to sit. They are risk averse. They don't know, especially because of the absence of energy legislation, but also a lot of other things. They just don't know where the U.S. economy is going to bump up and how. And so there's very a sense of just waiting in the United States. And if we look at Washington, D.C., we also have to look at all of the state capitals. Almost every state in the United States, with the exception of Vermont, by constitution, must balance their budget at the end of their cycle. That hasn't happened in the dog's age, but it doesn't matter. It's always this push and pull. You saw that in many, many states in November. You saw it specifically in Massachusetts. Why do you in this audience care? Because states are broke, they're going to be looking for money, and they can't tax their own residents. They don't want to tax their own businesses. In fact, they'll probably keep the money that they kind of have and give tax incentives, tax credits, tax holidays to domestic in-state manufacturing to draw in investments in-state. That's another thing you need to be worried about. But they're going to be looking, therefore, for revenue from out-of-staters. And I worry that other states will follow the Massachusetts example of a couple of years ago, where they changed their tax nexus policies and start looking for ways to tax out-of-state business operations and business partners. Those are the kind of things that kind of keep me up late at night, keeps me very, very busy. I hate to end it on a downer note, but I think that what I have learned and what I do for CME, we have a website that's been refurbished and looks really great now. And I probably put something on that website on the USA page pretty much every day. I literally do read the Federal Register every morning, which is their version of our Canadian Gazette, because things are going to happen so quickly. Canadian audiences are very sophisticated. They know the scoop, but it's going to happen very, very quickly. I like to say that, you know, I have to deliver bad news to see my CME members, but they're going to get the news. And then the other thing that I do a USA Watch every month. This is what's happening, this is who's doing it, this is why, do you want to read more, click here, do you not care, fine. Do you want to comment? Does it really worry you? Let us know. And then the other thing is a US a column that I write every month that sort of gives the readers an in-between-the-lines sense of the political and social environment in the United States. Canadians get Americans to a large degree. Not as much as we think we do, actually. But Americans don't get Canadians. They really, really don't. And so it is a job and a job description that is always changing. It is the best gig in town. And I'm quite delighted, as I always am, to speak to Canadian audiences. Thank you very much.